Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon to you all. Welcome to the fourth keynote session of Theveli 2023. My name is Abdul Afif. I'll be the moderator for this session. Presenter for this session is Professor Željko Bačić, and he'll be talking about smart education for disaster-threatened smart cities. Before I call upon him to the stage, I would like to give a small introduction about Professor Željko. Professor Željko is specialized in satellite geodesy and geoinformatics. He is a full-time professor at the Faculty of Geodesy in University of Zagreb, and he is also a visiting professor at University of Split, Croatia. He has been in the academia for the past 35 years. He completed his master's degree in Zagreb and PhD at the Technical University of Graz, Austria. Professor Bačić also served as the Director General of Croatian National Mapping and Cadastre Agency over past 12 years. His scientific career has evolved over time, from basic geodetic works to pioneering GPS usage in Croatia for positioning and navigation. During his time at the Croatian National Mapping and Cadastre Agency, he immensely contributed to the establishment of spatial data infrastructure, sensor integration, and Earth observation in Croatia. The recent 2020 earthquakes in Croatia motivated Professor Željko to expand his research into development of smart cities in an environment threatened with potential disasters. He also plays a vital role in the introduction of these contents into the study programs using smart education. Professor Željko is also active on international and regional level, coordinating and participating in a number of Erasmus Plus projects in Europe, Asia, and Africa. He is also the coordinator of University of Zagreb for the ongoing project UN4DRR, on which MNU is a partner university. Due to his commitment to research and invaluable contribution made in the field of satellite geodesy and geoinformatics, he is appointed to the Scientific Committee for Space of Ministry of Science in Croatia. Furthermore, Professor Željko is appointed as Croatian representative in Copernicus Committee at Directorate General of Defense Industry and Space at European Union. So now I call upon Professor Željko to give his speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Afif. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon. I hope that sugar in your blood raised after the lunch, so that you will manage to listen to me for next 40-45 minutes. So I will speak about, we will in a way close the circle. We started with the problems, with the changes in the nature, with the first presentation given by André, and spoke about specific aspects related to these, nitrogen spoken by Mark, etc. And now somehow we are closing this circle and speaking about education and how to teach or how to educate new professionals related to those changes, maybe even we can say disruptions. So let us set the scene. First of all, the first input is human population. Today we are 8 billions. Very soon we will be 10 billions. The interesting fact or the relevant fact is that today 4.4 billions are living in the cities, but soon it will be 50% more. So in 2050 it will be 50% more people living in the cities. So this meaning that whole growth of the human population will go into the cities. So this is, of course, creating a situation where on cities are given tremendous challenges how to develop them and how to cope with those changes. Then we have another issue that we live, or we are organized in the nations, and we live mainly either in the rural areas or in the cities. Considering cities, there is one classical definition that is a permanent and highly organized center, which is living, so population lives from industry, trade and service, and most of the definitions are saying in brackets non-agricultural activities. So this is the main distinction from the rural population. There is a newer definition given by the European Union and saying that it's much more. And it's about the identity, it's about the capacity and responding the demands and needs of its inhabitants. So it is, in different words, said almost same thing as a previous sentence, but we can say it's expanded. We can also say that cities are one of the biggest achievement of humankind. So if we think what's left us from the previous nations, the lost countries, states, etc., these are the traces of the settlements. These are the traces of the humans living somewhere in organized way in some cities. And since the title speaks about smart cities, we should be aware that people always tried to build their settlements in a smart way. So they, of course, this was intuitive. They learned where is the water, where is the good air, where is some wood for fires, are those settlements on the roads, on the transportation routes, etc. Meaning that according to the knowledge, according to the technology they had in a recent epoch, they built their cities. With the Industrial Revolution in the second half of the 18th century, this has slowly been pushed behind because humankind and people found out, or they thought, that they can control the nature with the industry, with the technology. So in this sense, we start to develop cities out of some logical and natural ways. For example, I spoke with a colleague, I don't know, he's not here, I don't see him, from Pakistan, and there were those big floodings in Pakistan a few months ago. And none of the city old center has been flooded. Always the new settlements, because they were built in near the rivers, in the areas which could be flooded and things like this. So this is also showing that people intuitively knew where and how to build, but with the industrial revolutions we somehow neglected it. Next input for us is the climate change. Climate change, which results also with more and more natural disasters. However, we know that the climate is changing continuously, so through the time, through the history as such, and the natural disasters always existed as such, so this is nothing specially new. What is new is that we live in a moment when we contributed to those natural disasters, or better to say, we contributed to the climate change. So the climate change is speeding up, and this you can see on the right picture. So the emission of the atmospheric CO2, so carbon dioxide emission, and the growth of the temperature, which are directly correlated. The consequence of this climate change is that as humans, as we are usually doing, we immediately define the indicators to follow those changes, and in accordance to 6 key indicators, all the indicators are in red, meaning that the values are growing, and growing much faster than it was foreseen 10, 20 years ago, meaning that it could happen that new surprises are in front of us, so that these changes might become even faster. Result is that the natural disasters are intensified. They are intensified in number, in appearance, and in strength. And this, additional to this, we have a special consequence of the climate change, and this is a sea level rise. And the discrepancy of the estimations goes between 0.65 meter up to some 2.4 meters. The point is that with the climate change and the sea level rise, some 900 million people will be affected which live in low coastal areas, and some 20% of the world GDP. So these are substantial figures. And you can see here on the right side NASA's Earth Observatory projection of the possible developments of the global mean sea level rising up to 2300, which is very, it's spread, so we are not sure what will happen, how will happen, and basically we need simply a longer period of observation to be able to give a better prognosis for this. And of course, don't forget, these are all estimates, so it could happen that something changes, something happens, and that things go in some other direction, up or down, we don't know. The result of the climate changes is increase of multiple threats, so natural disasters, resulting in poverty, lack of resources, insecurity, and of course also diseases. And we do not have to go far away to look for such events. So on 22nd of July there was a storm over Zagreb, the picture above, and believe me, it's really cloudy, it's not spaceship in this behind this black. So, and it is completely unusual. We never have strong storms in July. July is most peaceful month in Croatia. 12 people died from this storm in Croatia and the surrounding countries. So it was so strong, and not only that it was strong storm, it repeated several times in a 3-day cycle. So a lot of damages. Then also, just 10 days ago, we had a forest fire on Hawaii. Also completely unpredictable, came suddenly, and more than 100 people died in this storm, so a terrible disaster. And also last week there are new floodings in Australia, in eastern Australia, and Australia is recently, in last few years, hit either by extreme drought or by extreme floodings. And so on and so on. I mentioned floodings in Pakistan, etc. So there are very many such events, and the characteristic of these events, those events, is that they are stronger, they are unpredictable, and they are more frequent. And seems, at least seems now, that this is becoming our new normal with which we have to live. So, however, we have to be aware that the picture is not same everywhere. So we have 3 situations considering the cities, climate change, development of cities, and the climate change and the changes which are happening. So I took 3 countries, for example. So first is Croatia. We are now for 25 years declining nation in population. And basically our cities are more or less not growing. So considering smart cities, we are only working on improving those cities. Then we have Maldives. Maldives are still growing in population, but not very fast. So according to the UN statistics, the growth will go till 2058, and then it will go down, but not very much. It's 50,000 up, and then some 75,000 should go down. So, but the towns, cities, especially Male, is still fast growing. So there is a huge pressure on the Male and Hulu Male. And finally, the third example is Egypt. So it's a nation with a fast-growing population. Today, Egypt has 113 millions. 2100 should be 225 million. So the population should double. And also, they have a fast-growing cities. So let's look a little bit in figures. I will not comment all of them, but just rather to comment what each of the country is doing considering development of the cities. So in Croatia, we are in principle trying to improve our cities, to remove the errors from the past, raise the quality of life, and make cities in this context smarter. In Maldives, if I may say so, my understanding is that there is an issue of migration towards Male, and this project of expansion of Male on or Male urban area on the cities, islands on the north, which has also an issue because it could happen easily that big part of the population lives in fact in one urban area. So then is a question of what with other archipelagos and what with empty land, what we already also have in Croatia, many unpopulated villages. And finally, Egypt. Egypt has a problem because most of the Egypt is desert, and the arable land and land good for living is only in the around Nile and the coastal area, and this is much less than this 1 million square kilometers. And to protect the Nile Delta and the Nile River bank, the government of Egypt has launched a project to build new cities for 20 million people, and they are doing it now. So New Cairo, new capital near Cairo, new El Alamein, new Aswan, and some other cities, everything mega cities for millions of people, just to create a situation that the agricultural land is not destroyed, which is relevant for the food security of the country. So as you can see, there are at least three different scenarios which we have to think about, meaning that development of cities, smart cities, as we like to say, is very locally colored, so depends on the conditions in each country and maybe even specific city. So to summarize, population is growing, migrating to cities, and climate change are increasing. So the development of the cities is probably one of the biggest challenges of the humankind in the 21st century. And we would like to avoid errors which we did in past 200 years. So the cities should become sustainable, and they should be resistant to the changes, to the disruptions, climate changes, but also other changes like economical, political, etc. So the word smart has been coined, meaning that we want to bring together all our knowledge and resources to build those cities in a way that they will be able to cope with the challenges. And smart cities, definition says, there are many definitions. There is not one specific definition what is smart city. Depends also very much on who is coining the definition. So is it IT society, financial sector, governmental sector, environmentalists, etc. But in principle it goes that city should be built in a way that it benefits to its inhabitants and businesses. And the emphasis is very often on technology and in ecological aspects, but we have to keep in mind that no smart city can be functional if the societal aspects are not solved. So imagine, I think also you are facing alone this situation when people from some atoll where they lived in a freedom, in a space, etc., come to Male or Hulhumale and come in a small apartment with no space to exercise their activities which they did before. This is a huge shock for them. So this is something what has also must be taken in account if we want that those cities succeed. There are many aspects of smart cities. I will not go into details because I am not building a smart city, but all of them must be taken in account. The problem is, anybody who had any touch with urban planning knows that the urban planning is extremely complex. And now with the smart cities we want to make them even more complex. And we fight even with the present level of urban planning, and now we have to take everything into account. And how do we build smart cities? In principle, we need a vision carrier. One person, governments, whatever, for example, the line in Saudi Arabia, the town which should be built for 9 million people. We know that this is, so to say, idea of Prince bin Salman. And so he is the engine which pushes the development of this city. In Egypt, this is a picture of New El Alamein. Government is pushing it, so New El Alamein should be a new town for 1.5 million people, what is a huge number. You have always problem. What will you offer to those cities that people want to come to them, that they want to live in those cities, that those cities become functional and profitable, so to say. And finally, I found out also one example. There was a proposal idea about the floating cities on Maldives. So I think it was some project done together with some university or company from Norway, I think. So on the right side, mega projects, floating city is not a mega project. And you know, mega project, mega problems. Smaller projects, it's a little bit easier. You know, even if you fail, the failure is not so big. No? So, what enables us to build the smart cities? So, first of all, yes, the technology advance. The technology is going forward, so it's a digital technology, it's sensors, integrated sensors, it's artificial intelligence, new concepts about usage of data, so spatial data infrastructure, or Internet of Things, or digital twins today, so identical copy of some engine, of some factory, or even city as such, which allows us to exercise what we want to develop and test it without building it and then finding that we made an error. And we have to be aware also that smart cities, the present idea of smart cities was not imagined at the very beginning. It's, in literature we can find that it started in early 1960s when the town of Los Angeles had a lot of problems with traffic and population, etc. And they started the efforts, attempts to use IT to simply deal with all those data. So it was the first idea was to improve the government of the cities. After 9/11, the security was major focus. So, for example, New York literally in 1 year installed several 100,000 sensors, cameras in city to increase the information about what is happening in city. I mean, the New York government. Then resilient cities. So after these shocks which happened, and there was also this real estate market crisis in United States and some other shocks. So basically the issue was how to become resistant from further future shocks, either economical, environmental, social or institutional. So we want to see what has to be done so that we can cope with those shocks and work further without any harm for our citizens. And our present idea, or idealistic, not idealistic, but the futuristic picture are green smart cities. Green smart cities in a sense that we live in a balance with the nature without harming the nature or minimally harming the nature, and in this way contribute to the cities which are the, so to say, big not competitor but big destructor of the nature, that they become in fact a partner to the nature. And there are some projects already, for example, ideas, visions in Malaysia, for example, and new capital of Indonesia should become green sustainable cities. And finally, the last concept is the self-sufficient smart cities, which says that city should be self-sufficient in 5 categories: power, food, water, data, and circular economy. Well, power, yeah, I suppose this can be done. I think technology is advanced enough. The question is, how much does it cost? Food, honestly, I cannot imagine in a moment that a town of 5 million people can produce food for itself, but I'm not specialist in this. It's definitely, many things are possible, but I think there is still a way in front. Water is in many cities problem already. Data, manageable. And circular economy, yes, I think this can be also done. The question is also the costs, but this probably will, with the time, further develop and probably come to existence. So, what we have today is that we have it in a micro. Micro means we have already smart houses, so which are completely digitalized. All the devices in the houses are connected, networked, connected also with our mobile phones, so we can communicate with them, etc., etc. On smart cities, considering smart cities, they are figured out. There are elements which are developed already, like smart parking, smart traffic, smart garbage removal, air quality monitoring, etc., etc. But we are still a long way is in front of us to really build a full smart city. The only, what we can say, smart city, but it's not smart city, is a quarter in a part of the town inside of Dubai, made it systematically so we can say it's near to be smart city. Considering development of smart cities, of course there are many risks. First, as I said, bigger investment, bigger risk. For example, for the line in Saudi Arabia, estimated cost is $500 billion. According to usual situation in the construction business, this means that the cost will double before it will end. So 1,000 billions. It's even for Saudi Arabia a lot of money. Then it's extremely complex. So the complexity should not be underestimated. It's not about technology only, but also social inclusion and everything else. We have to take care about vulnerable groups and natural, nature valuable areas. We have to incorporate climate change and climate impact in the planning. This is not easy at all. So you have to incorporate in your planning estimations, which may be correct and which may not be correct. So there are a lot of, so to say, issues and a lot of questions which are looking answers and some decisions for which you might not have enough facts. And smart cities, you know, in the construction, especially there is always a question of profit. And then you have a situation like in a recent last earthquake in Turkey, where 70,000 people died, most of them in newly built buildings because they were built without, not in accordance to the standards and without concrete in the beton. So without steel in the concrete, sorry. So yeah, the smart cities are not all about profit. And then also the question is, those new cities, should they be closed or opened? Closed because it's easier controllable, but then there are other questions, so they should definitely be open, vibrant cities. So what we need is to recognize a real situation, to comprehend the complexity, create models which will also cope with climate change, transfer those models into practical actions, and we have to have technology to build them. For each of this line I could comment a lot, but I would just like to say for the first, so recognize the real situation. When I was in a public service, then we had a lot of projects with some other European countries, and I always saying I learned only one word from each country. And from the Dutch people, I learned word pragmatic. So whatever you do, you have to be pragmatical. Not, you know, fell in love with your project and push it without consideration, etc. Must be very, very pragmatical whatever you do, because these are all activities which will last very long. So the question is, will you finish it, somebody else, and you should be convinced that you are realistic, that the project will come to the end. So, the question is, what is the prerequisite to achieve mentioned? And the answer is education. Why is answer the education? Because we need professionals which will be able to develop those smart cities. So we need new professionals, new profiles, with new knowledges and new skills and new attitudes even. So it's not so in parallel with the development of smart cities. Those smart cities are influencing education of smart education. And we should be aware that our educational system as such relies in effect on the system which was established in the 19th century. So we changed a lot with the time, but in principle, so the fundamentals of the education are quite old. So, and we have, it's in principle university or teacher-centered education. And since the fourth digital revolution and now recent fifth communication industrial revolutions are providing us new technologies which can be used in education. Basically, we have to transform this educational system. So we need more interdisciplinary teaching, research, and innovation. So we also need a new profiles. And also, we should remember that how the higher education started. So basically, it was figured out for the elite at the very beginning. And with the time, slowly, we came to the mass education. Today, many countries are offering places, number of places on the universities, which is equal to the numbers of the scholars which are finishing secondary schools, meaning that everybody can go to the university. Of course, not everybody is going, but there is opportunity for this. And now we are in some period which we can call post-massification, so that we have to choose, or we have to find a model which will provide us new educated professionals, which will have new qualities, which will be innovative, which will be so capable to solve problems, and which will have a necessary knowledge and skill. When I speak about this to my students, I'm trying to explain it in the following way. I'm coming from the Faculty of Geodesy, so I'm a surveyor. And surveyors are educated to measure extremely precise and to protect the registers which they are keeping, the cadastre, to house number register, border, national border registers, etc., etc. So basically, from very first day, we are talking to our students. You have to protect, you have to, ultimately, we are telling them, you are the priests of the holy millimeter. Meaning that our education is in principle quite conservative. Our approach is conservative. On our Faculty of Electrical Engineering and Computing, on the first lecture, they say to their students, your task is to solve the problems. However, you will solve the problem, but your task is to solving the problems. So this is opposite approach to the teaching. So this is something what we have to adopt on much broader level to everybody. So finally, so the new education should be supported by technology, interactive, and should be student-centered. And these new forms or smart education should use university as a platform. So provider of technology and organizer of the cooperation with the other stakeholders like governments, like NGOs, like businesses, to provide opportunity for students to learn. The education is a service. So we want to deliver education in the quickest, most efficient and best affordable form, which I, as a now already grey professor, can also discuss about this sentence. I'm not that I fully agree with this sentence, but yeah, okay, this is the view. And of course, mobility, so linked programs is also very important. So we have a triangle. If we want to have a smart city, then we need technology, so we need businesses, we need smart citizens also. It's not only to educate people who are going to the universities to be able to deal with smart cities. We need to educate all citizens about smart cities so that they can take ownership over those development of those smart cities and participate in the smart cities. Otherwise, the smart cities will not work. So, this, according to the literature, smart education is connected to the new generation of digital natives. And this is, I mean, I was a little bit skeptic. Of course, I'm looking my students; they are always on the mobile phones, etc. But I recently got a grandson, and he has 3 years. He is not speaking yet regularly, and still has overnight diapers, but he knows to use the mobile phone to get cartoons on this mobile phone. So these are the digital natives. So they are born with this, and they really use this in an intuitive way. For me, mobile phone is not intuitive. I'm too old to understand the logic, and then when they get when there is a new version of the software on the mobile for next month, I am crazy to catch all the changes which happen. So, yeah. So the smart education is designed to increase student engagement and enable teachers to adapt to student skills, interests, and learning preferences. And the reason is that simply we at the universities, we couldn't cope with such fast changes which happened in the last 30 years. So you know alone that the process of adoption of new curricula, of changing of curricula, takes 3 to 5 years. So, and the change, sometimes some products which came on the market last less than 5 years. So this is the problem which we have to cope with, and increasingly digital and technic-centric behaviors of the students, teachers, and partners are expanding way to that this learning occurs. Then we have a smart classroom. I will not speak too much about this. There are a lot of things which have to change in this student-centric context. And according to the US Department of Education, the level of digital use divides country on those who are progressing and which are declining. So which are able to cope with the changes and which are not able to changes, so which are only passive content consumer. And there are 21st century skills as they are presented today. So critical thinking, communication, creativity, problem solving, perseverance, collaboration, information literacy, technology skills, and digital literacy. Many of those things should also work in before, but seems not. Yeah. And so, the learning, smart education should be collaborative, decentralized, flexible. We have even ideas that students can, through the study time, freely choose courses, so to cancel the obligatory and elective courses. Everything is free for students to choose. We have also, in UK, there were studies done already about replacing teachers by artificial intelligence. So do we need teachers at all at universities? Can this be done by artificial intelligence as such? Imagine hundreds of thousands of teachers free and only one computer teaching students, dealing with students, etc. So universities are services, businesses, governments, and NGOs, stakeholders should be included in the learning process. Learners should implement self-learning. Learning should focus on problem solving. Learners should gain entrepreneurial skills. This is, in fact, also today in demand. Learners should be self-driven. And learning will become a whole life process. So the ultimate goal is to produce a smart citizen and smart academic citizen also, which will be able to contribute to the development of the smart cities. And in this way, the probability that the smart city projects will be successful will, in general, grow. And there are obstacles, of course. Students have to change their attitude. They have to become active leaders instead of the passive followers. Teachers should change also. So this means that we need a training, new training for teachers, and well, you know, also we, the academic society, we are also not so fond on changing. We like when we develop something, etc., that we run this for several years in a same way. The curriculum has to change much faster, and the learning environment will also change very much. So there will be learning from home, learning online, etc., combined everything together. So as I said, most of the time people don't like change. Smart learning goes against traditional education. Smart learning goes also against citizen thinking about, present citizens thinking about learning. And education is costly, so should we change it with, replace it with artificial intelligence? And at the end, as you can see, the technological and societal changes require change of educational system. Smart cities and the climate change have to be included into the curricula, so as a part of our learning of the students. We have to transform our education in smart education, so from teacher institution centers towards student centered. Digital technologies should be used for this purpose, and those new smart professionals should be able to develop smart and sustainable cities. And that's all from me. Thank you very much.
Željko. So I think we are indeed very happy for the in-depth you have given on smart cities and smart education. So let's hear from audience if they have any questions. We don't have much time, but I'll try to get one or two questions. So do you have any questions from the audience?
Thank you, sir, for the presentation. I was very interested when you talked about your grandson, and I felt like the current generation do really have so many insightful ideas and things which we could get a lot of knowledge from. So when we are trying to develop the smart cities and things, why don't we have like forums with them to find out their ideas as well? So do you come across literatures where they have done such kind of assessments in other countries as well? Thank you.
I can change, so to say, change your question or to answer it a little bit different. In principle, I spoke about the university education, but we have to change education from the fundamental level up to the university. You cannot change just university and keep the fundamental schools and secondary schools as they are. So yes, through this change of the fundamental schools, this should happen, what you said, so this interaction with the new generation, and simply taking knowledge or taking empirical findings from them to implement it in new developments.
Thank you, Professor. Indeed, it is very thought-provoking and very kind of food for brain of lecturers. I'm a lecturer in international relations, and recently I had the opportunity with the kind courtesy of Deputy Vice Chancellor Dr. Shenas to visit on a mobility program to Greece, and I had an exchange program with Greece. So when I came back, I tried to relate what I learned from Greece about smart teaching and all that. So most of my colleagues start laughing at me. But I think this presentation, I would like if you could share me this.
Yes, of course.
I want to immediately share this with my postgraduate students. Well, I fully agree with you that smart cities, before that, the prerequisite is smart brains. I had an experience in one of the states in India, Uttarakhand, where they have a laboratory kind of a small smart city, where the toilets are all operated with ICT hub, and every day these toilets are being damaged by users because they don't know. They are queuing up to use the toilet. But before that, they should be made toilet literate or ICT literate.
Yeah.
So we are in a situation. Therefore, my question is, there is criticism saying that smart cities are creating a kind of recycling dependence on producers, manufacturers of ICT software and gadgets.
Yeah.
So developing countries will still be developing, and we borrow all these ideas from the developed countries and aim, when we don't have an indigenous capacity to adopt smart cities, but we are investing on that rather than immediate, for our development we have immediate essentials to be attended. So what's your thinking or comments on this recycling of dependence, which was a theory in the 80s and 90s?
Yeah.
And, thank you.
Well, I wouldn't say yes. It started with the Internet of Things. There was a word that IBM invented, Internet of Things, to save its business. So this was some 15 years, 20 years ago. Some comments on this, but digital technology enables us anything. Ultimately, look, without digital technology, without microelectromechanical systems which are inside, this would not work. We would still have a line and a telephone and everything else, and doesn't have to be. It depends very much on us, on group, on what are our priorities, how, so to say, how everybody is focused, or the focus is only who will sit in the chair and rule or be the head. So, I mean, this. No, I don't think that it's about the recycling, about the industry, that this is the point. Of course, you cannot allow, or there should always be balance between the technology or technological sector and other sectors. And we shouldn't allow that any sector prevails.
Thank you, Professor Željko. So I think that brings us to the conclusion of this keynote session. I would like to invite our Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Dr. Aisha Shehnaz, to give a token of appreciation for our keynote speech.
Thank you very much. I am honored. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes the session. Thank you all and have a